Welcome to the Simple Idea Podcast. In today's episode, you're listening to a conversation that I had with Ronald L. Ronald is an online content creator, poet, and minimalist. In this interview, I asked him about his experience with minimalism and some of the practices that he's implemented to positively influence himself and the people around him. So enough with the introduction, let's get into it. Ron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you and talk about some things that are going on in my life. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be a very interesting conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. Been really looking forward to this. So before we get into any of the questions that I have for you today, would you mind giving listeners a little bit of background information about yourself, maybe a brief introduction?
Yeah, why not? Let's start with the basics. So my name is Ron Banks. I'm 26 years old. I'm a content creator on YouTube, Instagram. I'm a poet. That's where I started. Poetry is close to my heart, so that's where all of this started and began. My message, my stories, the things that I enjoy talking about all started with poetry. So it all stems from that, and I guess we'll kind of dive a little bit more into that as we talk through here on the podcast. So I'm just really excited about it.
Of course. So I don't know too much about your poetry background, but when did you get started?
Yeah. Oh man, when did I get started with poetry? Poetry started for me by accident, honestly. It started in high school by accident. I was always that kid that was pretty closed off with my emotions. I didn't express much. I bottled everything up. And it was one day my parents came to me. They said, you know what? If you don't really want to talk about what you feel or what's going on, then we suggest you write it down. So they bought me a little binder or a little notebook. And I just started writing down things that were on my heart, on my mind. And then that kind of grew into poetry. In a way.
Yeah.
So I may not consider it to be poetry back then, but it was poetry to me. And then as I learned about the art of poetry and spoken word, then that grew, my creativity grew, and it just expanded from there. So it just started with my emotions, kind of journaling, and then it just grew into storytelling and more so poetry.
Okay. So out of curiosity, would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert? Like, does it
man
at all by any chance?
That's a good question. I think I'm a little bit of both.
Okay.
Initially, I'm an introvert. I'm pretty closed off in regards to my thoughts, things that I think about. But when I'm around people that I'm comfortable with, or people that know me, that I know them, I'm a very much so an extrovert. So I'm good with people. I'm a people person. I can communicate well with others. I can hold a conversation. But when I'm in my own time, in the silence of my apartment, I kind of like to have my quiet time. I'm in my thoughts. So a little bit of both, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I would say me and myself, I'm in a very similar situation as you, where, I'm naturally kind of like more, I look kind of inward more, I would say.
Right.
Still able to communicate with people, still able to have, thoughtful interactions. But at the end of the day, I need to recharge, kind of get back to myself. And then I'm able to tend to other people again, if that makes sense.
Exactly. I like the way you said that's like a recharge, kind of come back to you and what you feel and what you're about, what you want to focus on. So yeah, I like the way you worded that.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of banking off of your experience with content creation and just everything that you've kind of built up over the years, I guess, what made you kind of like experiment with these things and then share these practices with an online audience? Like, what made you think, okay, YouTube, Instagram?
Oh man, good question. I think it all goes back to poetry again.
Okay.
It started with my poetry, me expressing myself, and as I learned more about the art of spoken word and how it was done and created my own style with it, I would always recite my poems or perform my poems with my friends and just goofing around. And then someone told me, like, you should post videos, you should share videos. So when I was in college, I posted my first poem video on Facebook. I had a fan page back then, so I posted a video on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people I went to college with saw that and got some positive responses for it. So, when you initially share anything that's close to you like that, you're extremely nervous about it.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my first online experience with sharing my art. And then because I shared my poetry on Facebook and then eventually onto YouTube, that grew. I got a lot of positive responses from that. I was a part of a women's empowerment conference because of it. I've done some open mics because of it. I've hosted an open mic because of it. And then as I saw how people responded to my message and my poetry, I thought that it was a good idea to share the other things that I thought about, other things that were heavy on my heart, heavy on my mind. And as I started to grow and mature, that's when the whole minimalism came into play with my content and starting to share my journey with that. So as far as online, it all started with poetry, man. And it all goes back to that for me.
So it stems back to your roots. That's really cool, actually.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I know you said that it started in college for you. I am going to ask you more about your college experience probably later in the episode. But I don't know, what did you go to school for? Like how did you build up your situation now? Like how are you able to incorporate what you're doing with your YouTube stuff with what you kind of learned in college? Like do the two kind of match up?
Oh man, so when I first started the whole YouTube and Instagram and content creating, it was really, just kind of an expression for me.
Okay.
When I was going to college, I went to college for marketing. So I have 2 degrees. I graduated with a marketing degree and then a business management degree. Okay. I currently work in corporate America. So I'm using my marketing and communication aspect of my education there. But as far as my content creating, that is all the creative side of my mind. So I like to think of how I think split into 2. So I have a very creative driven mindset. Mm-hmm. Also, I have a very driven, business driven and focus driven mindset as well. So going to college was more so that business and focus driven side. Okay. Working in corporate America is that side. And then my creativity comes back to the poetry, the minimalism, the content creating on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah. Okay. All of it together kind of helps round you out a little bit, though.
Right. Exactly.
From different areas there.
It's a balancing act for sure. I gotta flip the switch when I come home or when I go to work. Because oftentimes I'm very creative late at night, and that's when a lot of things spark in my mind, and I'm writing and I'm creating and I'm building scripts for YouTube or writing posts for my Instagram or different things like that. So when it's time to go to work the next day, I got to flip that switch and say, you know what, I got to put that on pause and focus on what I need to get done for my job and for the company that I work for. Of
course. So with that, I know you just talked about flipping the switch. Is one side of that more present than the other? Like, is it like a balancing act kind of thing? Or is it like kind of like automatic, like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, switch over to creative, switch over to, like, is it kind of too much to deal with at times, or like, have you balanced that out?
To be honest, it is a little difficult to balance sometimes, because I feel like I'm more skewed to the creative side of things, just how my mind works, how I think about things. I'm always trying to come up with a creative solution for different things. So in a way, it is a balancing act, but the position that I am in with my company and the things that I do for the company I work for, it allows me to use some of that creative thinking that I have to problem solve some of the situations that I'm involved in. So in a way, I have to flip that switch, it's an immediate flip, but sometimes it allows me a little bit of flexibility to go through a gradual transition because I enjoy thinking creatively, problem solving creatively. So having the opportunity to use that whenever I can has definitely helped me with that balance. And I just enjoy it so much easier, so much more when I can do that versus, feeling like I have to shut that side of me off all the time. So, but yeah.
All right. Yeah. It just kind of sounds like some of it seeps in, and then at other times it just kind of go one way or the other.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting to know. So, kind of focusing more on your channel a little bit more. The thing that kind of attracted me to it was just how it was like kind of put together and how it was structured. You carved out a very interesting niche with combining poetry and minimalism, and I think you kind of gave me my answer already, so I'm not going to really have you dive really like far into this, but it seems like it's like a passion project combined with like a little bit of marketing.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I think would make that the way I present my content a little more clear is when I first started sharing my poetry, when I was performing at open mics and hosting different open mics, especially in the early days on my Facebook videos, I would always tell my audience that my voice speaks for more hearts than just my own. And that's something that I still truly believe in, something that's still really close to me, because a lot of the poems that I shared and still share and still write about are messages and feelings that are close to me, things that I've experienced. But I communicate them in such a way where those watching or those listening or those reading feel as though I'm speaking exactly what they feel, or my mouth is moving and it's saying what their heart has been wanting to say for forever. So knowing that my voice speaks more hearts than just my own, it was an easier transition for me when it grew outside of poetry, or much larger than poetry, into messages like minimalism, intentional living, because I present my content in a way where I'm growing through this journey with those that are watching me. And I say that a lot in my videos. I'm sure you've heard me say that a few times. And because I'm presenting myself that way, again, the things that I talk about, the way that I talk about the things that I share, it comes across in a way where it's like, hey, he feels the same way that I feel, or he's experiencing some of the things that I'm experiencing. Or, hey, he's grown through that. So let me figure out how I can also grow through that. So I think it's a very unique, like you said, it's a unique dynamic between the minimalism and poetry when you look at it from the outside. But for me, they're one and the same, because my heart still speaks, my voice still speaks from my heart and just my own. So that's how I've always looked at it.
Okay. Awesome response, actually.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, just me personally, I haven't seen another channel that kind of combines the two.
Right.
Going back to you speaking like through other people and kind of just like using your words and people feeling what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty powerful in itself. Because I've always noticed, like, for me, the artists or the creators that I look up to the most are the people that allow me to tag along their journey, not just kind of allow me to just sit there and watch them do them. You know what I mean?
Right. I know exactly what you mean, and that's a position that I wanted to take when I first started this journey on YouTube, or content creation in general. I always wanted to be my authentic self and present myself in a way where it's like, hey, I'm just an average guy just like you, or an average person, a girl just like you, that is learning things, growing through things, and experiencing things in life. And just because I choose to document it and share it online doesn't make me any or that much different than you. So when others can look at my content and feel inspired and feel motivated and feel encouraged to do the same thing or do similar things, or just progress and grow on their journey because they feel as though they know me, or they can really relate to the things I talk about, then that's just awesome in itself. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt at all. But yeah, the authenticity definitely works. I feel like more creators and more artists should kind of follow that route. It kind of speaks to the fans a little bit more, just the people in their audience.
Exactly.
So, going off of that question, and we're gonna kind of go down a route that I've been interested to like talk to you about, because I'm also in a pretty similar situation. So you're the first black male that I've seen in the online minimalism space that's kind of like grown an audience. In your experience so far, what kind of comes with this newfound territory, and what exactly does it mean to you, as well for, I guess, other black men and women who kind of don't have like a major voice in this area, I guess you could say? In
this space, right? Wow. It's a really deep question.
Yeah, I'd still not been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah, so let's break it down in pieces. So the first part you asked me is you know, what's my experience with what comes with this territory. So I would say that with anything that you do in life, there is always going to be someone who doesn't like it or has an opinion about it, right?
Of course.
And my father taught my brother and I different life lessons growing up. He still does. And he always taught us to live our lives regardless of the opinions of others, right? To do what we want to do and to continue to learn and grow in our lives, and then present ourselves in the correct manner. And when I think about that, when someone sees my content, right, or they see that I talk about minimalism, or that I'm a poet, or that I talk about intentional living, initially when someone sees me, they probably wouldn't expect that to be the type of content that I share. And that's okay. That's an opinion. That's how others may view it. But it's something that I do share because it's who I am, and it's who I'm growing to be, and what I'm learning about. And, you know, I had an interview when I was in college, and for an internship. And there was a saying that I have that I actually use in this interview. And I told the lady who was interviewing me, I said, you must first understand me before you can know me. And it was kind of towards the end of the interview, and she was very surprised by that response. And I'll kind of explain it to her. I say, you know, when you look at me, you know, or you look at anybody, that you can judge a lot by the cover, but until you truly understand someone or their perspective or their thoughts and what they come from and how they're presenting themselves, then until you can fully understand that, it's impossible to know that person. So in regards to my experience with what comes with this territory, people are going to like it, people aren't going to like it. And that's fine. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, what does it mean to me?
Yeah.
I'm not naive to the fact that I'm a Black male in the minimalism space. I'm not naive to that at all. I know that. It's obvious when you watch my content, right?
Yeah, of course.
But personally, I'm not using my race as the key driver for my content.
Oh, and nor should it be at all.
Right, exactly. Is it a cool factor? Sure. Is it a shock to some people, depending on who you ask? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that I'm using as to spearhead my content. I'm purposely using my poetry and the uniqueness about my message and the way that I share my message and my thoughts that I have to be that key driver first in my content.
Yeah.
And, being a Black male in minimalism space or on YouTube and sharing content is one thing, but I'm personally not using that to spearhead or to drive my content. I'm using, like you said, when we've previously talked about, the creativity,
mm-hmm.
the unique dynamic between my poetry and minimalism and the way that I communicate my message. I think that's how I look at my content. So it's kind of hard for me to answer, what does it mean to me when someone, sees my content? It's like, oh, he's a Black man in the minimalism space.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to answer how I feel about that because I don't look at my content as being a Black man in the minimalism space.
Yeah.
So, but it's a really deep question, really interesting question.
No,
but hopefully I answered it.
No, it's more than an appropriate response, honestly.
Right.
Really
right.
well thought out, and I personally appreciate it.
No, yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, just one of the questions that I had that I thought would be interesting to ask. But yeah.
Right. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who have wondered that same question or have thoughts. I receive a lot of comments on my videos, and I always do my best to respond to as many as possible. I'm still trying to catch up, but
mm-hmm.
there have been comments, referencing, me being a Black man in the minimalism space, and I'm grateful that people are recognizing that. I appreciate the love and the support, but again, when I respond to those comments, I always bring it back to my purpose and the message that I'm communicating, which is to encourage those to stay true to themselves and to continue to learn and grow on their journeys.
Mm-hmm.
And your journey is going to be unique to you. And I'm happy. I love the fact that you feel inspired and encouraged by me, and feel connected to me, whether it's through because you're also a Black man or a Black woman and you feel a connection that way, or you feel a connection just through the message that I share and the things that I talk about. Wherever that connection comes from, I'm happy that connection is there. But as long as we stay true to the paths on our own journeys and we're learning and growing as a community and as individuals, I feel like my message is well received.
All right. Absolutely. At the end of the day, all you can do is, be who you are.
Right. Exactly.
Whatever comes from.
Very true.
So, yeah, definitely a response that I think is fitting for the question.
Yep, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you asking again. I just want to throw that out there. I definitely appreciate you asking that.
Oh yeah, no,
asking that question.
Like you said before, there's probably somebody else out there who was wondering the same thing.
Right, so, exactly.
It's out there now, and this is like sort of going off of that question, but in a bit of a different direction.
Okay.
So within the African American community or just the Black community,
mm-hmm.
depending on the company that you keep or who you're in association with, the betterment of education can often be looked down upon, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I'm just kind of wondering, has pursuing higher education or just experimenting with different practices like minimalism affected any relationships that you have with friends, family, coworkers? It doesn't have to be bad. It could be good. Just curious.
Right.
What is your experience with that?
That's an interesting question as well. I think when I first talk about higher education, it's funny you asked me that because my senior thesis, I graduated college in 2015, and my senior thesis,
mm-hmm.
The topic that I wrote about and did my presentation on was the retention rate of minorities in higher education. So it's interesting that you asked me about that and my experience with higher education and how it's affected my relationships. But in terms of family, it hasn't affected any of my relationships with my family. My parents, my extended family have all been extremely supportive of bettering yourselves, going to college and just getting an education and doing what you want to do with your life. I graduated from college. My younger brother graduated from college. So my family relationships, nothing's changed with that. They're extremely supportive of whatever we do in our lives. And even now, the things that I do and the things that my younger brother does, he's very intentional with his life as well, probably even more so than I am in certain ways. But because we're maturing and learning and growing in this direction, in a way, our parents are also learning from that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's always, we always have great conversations when we all talk. So there's no, negative impact in regards to my family. Now, when it comes to friends, I made a decision in my life before I fully committed to minimalism and intentional living, to surround myself with certain individuals. In high school, I had this nickname, and you've probably heard me talk about this in some of my videos, this whole Mr. Smooth personality that I had. And I was, somewhat popular in high school. I had a lot of friends. I knew a lot of people. People knew me. People knew me personally. People knew me just because of the nickname. And a lot of those friendships weren't genuine. They were just because of this cool nickname, this cool factor that I had throughout high school, throughout college. And once I matured to a certain point, before living a more minimalist and intentional life, I chose to only surround myself with certain people. So in that regard, it was before minimalism where I chose to have a change within those relationships that I had with certain friends. So it affected my friendships with people both positively and negatively. There are very few people that I still associate with now, that I'm extremely close with now. A handful of people from college and a few people that I've met after college that are in my close circle that I'm extremely close with. We all share very similar mindsets. We all share very similar thought processes. So they're not minimalist, nor do I want them to be minimalist. But with us sharing, like I said, similar mindsets, we're all headed in very similar directions. So that's one positive thing about the friendships that I have now. When it comes to coworkers,
I thought this would be interesting.
That's interesting. I've personally made a decision to keep my professional relationships and my personal relationships separate. It's just something that I've chose to do. So people that I work with, they're all great people. We talk, we associate while we're at school. While we're at their office. But they know that I do poetry. They know that I'm on YouTube. They know that I practice minimalism, intentional living. They know these things. We have conversations around these things, but the conversation has never gone deep enough for it to affect our coworker relationship either direction, right? Just because I've chose to keep those relationships separate. And I don't know, it's just something that I chose to do. So they know about these things, but they don't know enough, or we haven't delved deep enough into the conversations for really to affect our relationship inside or outside of the office.
Okay. That's actually very interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all, but at the same time, I'm that's good.
What was your thoughts behind it?
I don't know. Well, what I do want to say is, with just surrounding yourself with people, like this is kind of like, I'm not saying I didn't expect to say this at all, because I kind of did, but I don't know, it's kind of like open-ended here. But you talking about just being able to surround yourself with the right people, so that, I guess this kind of question is irrelevant at this point, but just surrounding yourself with the right people, like that just took me off guard, because I'm like, that's all you really need to do in this situation to not really worry about something like being looked down upon by people in your community. The community is people that, are like-minded individuals like yourself. Like that doesn't even really apply. You know what I mean?
Right. But then again, you got to look at it from a broader perspective, because, like I said earlier in the conversation, there are going to be people who like what you do and don't like what you do, who support what you do and don't support what you do. So, regardless of where you are or where you grew up or what community you surround yourself with, or who you go to school with, there are going to be people from both sides of the fence. And you have to, in your own individual life, your own individual mindset, be able to decide which side of the fence you want to be on. And like you said, when you can surround yourself with those positive, like-minded people, the earlier, the better, number one. But when you do it, you'll start to see a change in your own perspectives, your own mindset, your own thought processes, and the decisions that you decide to make in your own life. Because whether we believe it or not, and I'm sure you've probably heard this saying, you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Mhm.
And when those 5 people are very different, right? And I'm not talking about personality. I'm not talking about, where they grew up. Obviously, all that stuff's going to be different. But when those people are extremely different in terms of their mindset and the path that they're traveling on, then that's just going to cause more confusion in your own life, because you're trying to balance all these different type of relationships. You're trying to be the cool, fun, let's go out and get drunk friend with this person. And you're trying to be the cool, let's study all night with this person. It becomes this, and those are very simple examples, but yeah. I think you kind of get the point that I'm making. But when your circle is very similar in terms of mindset and paths that they're traveling on, then it almost gives you the motivation you need outside of your own self-motivation to stay true to your path and the journey that you're traveling on. So like you said, it really stems back to who you surround yourself with. And it's an easy saying to say, it's an easy concept to understand, but it's not so easy to implement when you think about it.
Yeah, no, not at all. And just like you kind of like running through that backstory as to where you kind of like put the right people in your life, I guess you could say. Right. I have a very not similar backstory, but I kind of followed a similar route back in high school. Kind of well known, not popular, but talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different acquaintances. And then like midway through high school, kind of realized like, oh, everybody's not my friend. These people don't actually genuinely care about me. So then you start searching for like more meaningful relationships, or people that you have more in common with, people that kind of share the same visions and ideals as you. So then did that going into college. Kind of started separating myself, from some of the people in high school because we just weren't on the same wavelengths.
Right.
Gradually progressed through college, find this whole minimalism thing, start experimenting with that, seeing other people in my own community that are doing somewhat similar things and surrounding myself with those people. So, like me, present day, I have 3 or 4 very close friends, and we pretty much all have the same idea or same mindsets towards just life, or just trying to progress ourselves and just become better versions of ourselves. But we do that by building each other up.
Perfect. Yeah. That's how it should be. You should always be, while those that you surround yourself with are all traveling in similar directions, you each should be learning from each other and knowing that, you found that, in college is awesome, man. Really, really, really proud of you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know where it's taking me, but just as long as you feel like you have the right, group of friends or just family, whoever it is, that solid group of people there, I think that's where it really makes all the difference.
Yep.
But yeah. So bit of a lighter question here and kind of open-end it. But what areas of your life do you feel like you need to fine tune or improve? And then the opposite of that question, what do you think you're doing pretty well at? And kind of.
Oh man. Okay. So areas of my life that I feel that I need to fine tune and improve. One would definitely be building my comfort level with change. And I say that because when you make a shift in your lifestyle, your mindset, the things that you're challenging yourself with, change is naturally going to come with that. And as humans, we have emotions. We're naturally going to be hesitant towards change. Anything that is outside of our comfort zone, anything that appears to be uneasy or something that we're not completely sure about, there's going to be a fear there or some type of hesitation. And I believe I've talked about this in one of my videos as well, but, and that's, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but that's why I always say that I'm growing on my journey as well with those that are watching me, because I truly am growing through all of this stuff. And that's why I say that's something that I'm still working on and still improving in my own life and my own journey is my own comfort level with change. And I feel as though the more that I grow and the more that I become comfortable with that idea and with change and the change that's happening in my life, then other doors are going to open up for me. Other things that I want to do are going to start to present themselves. And just because my own comfort level has increased with knowing that this is a part of the process. So that would definitely be my number one thing that I'm improving on in my own life. Now, something that I'm doing well, that's a good question. I really got to take some self-reflection on that one and really, look at it from a bird's eye view.
Yeah, it could be a tough one to answer. You don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna give you an answer.
All right.
Yeah, because I want to challenge myself to see if I can look from that perspective and really, because sometimes when we're in our own heads, we only see the negative. We see the things that we need to fix. We see the things that are wrong, but we're not looking at the things that we've done well or the things that we've improved upon to get to where we are, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I think something. Go ahead.
So even with this question, it doesn't have to be something that you're doing well at, but something that you're even like improving upon just at a steady rate.
Okay. Well, I would say that thing would be my willingness and openness to always learn and challenge myself. And I think that really stems from my athletic background. I've been an athlete since I can remember, competing competitively, and I've developed this mindset early on being an athlete. And now that I'm no longer competing in anything at a very competitive level, whether it's college or even after college, I still always manage and push myself to continue to learn new things and to continue to challenge myself. And that's both mentally and physically. So I think that's something that I would say that I'm doing well at, is my willingness to always learn and challenge myself.
Yeah. I think it's important to treat each individual day as a new learning experience.
Right.
Not that this is
Exactly.
totally applicable here, but for a while, I mean, I'm going to say around my freshman year of college, I wasn't really, or up until that point, I wasn't somebody that was like largely into reading. Not that reading,
Right.
Makes you intelligent or makes you learn more or anything like that, but in a way it kind of does. If you break up reading into very small, like incremental tasks, I guess you could say. So instead of reading like 300 pages a week or a book a week, you could read like 10 or 15 pages a day. And like a very specific example, mind you. But like with that 10 or 15 minutes that you're taking to read 10 or 15 pages, you're already giving yourself the chance to learn more information that way, as opposed to not doing anything at all because that task seems kind of daunting or kind of seems too much.
Exactly.
But very, very specific example. And just with learning, I guess you could say, learning, that's one way it could take place. But just always look to you're always in a situation to be learning. Whether you're my age, your age, somebody who's 85 years old, life always has something new to teach. So
exactly,
approach it with
exactly.
Open arms.
Yep. And I like that analogy you gave with reading a book and breaking it down into smaller pieces. And you can take that, like you said, it's a very simple example, but you can take that example and apply it to any area of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you're looking at the much bigger picture, it becomes overwhelming and then you start to get discouraged. But when you break it down into smaller pieces, like you said with the book example, how can I read a book a week? Well, if you break it down in smaller pieces, you're really only reading 10, 15 pages a day, depending on how long the book is, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at it from that perspective, when you break it down into smaller pieces, and each of those pieces that you complete and achieve, that adds up to this larger goal, the much larger picture that you're chasing after. So I really like the way you worded that, the visual behind that. So because you can apply it to anything in your life when you think about it.
When you look at it like that, things in general just seem like they're a lot more,
obtainable.
Or just more
exactly. Exactly.
So shout out to my dad for that one. He's actually the one who started to get me to read.
Oh yeah.
So
shout out to him for that.
Yeah.
There's a life lesson that's hidden in there as well. So definitely.
So now, kind of going off topic a little bit, but like I said, I wasn't reading any books at all before, and now I'm reading like anywhere from like maybe 10 to 20 a year.
Wow. Awesome.
All that information that I have. And I obviously keep these books in the library, and I have it at my disposal now, but it's the fact that I didn't before, now I do. Very incremental.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Awesome, man.
So switching gears completely, kind of.
Yeah.
Going back to this college thing that we were talking about before. Do you think pursuing a degree is necessary for most people? Like, in your opinion, would you recommend it, or are there just too many variables to consider for it to be like a very generalized thing for most people?
Oh man.
Because it seems like you're putting your degree to use. Some people, they get a degree and maybe they don't really do much with it. maybe they get a degree and it ends up being something they don't want to do. Like,
Right. And I think, I'm not a a professional on this subject and or giving any direct advice on this,
yeah,
but I definitely think that there's a lot of variables that come into play with this. Um, if you know what you want to do and you know what you have a passion for, and if it requires you to have a higher education, there are some, specialty jobs or things that require you to have a level of education or a degree or certificate of some sort. So in that case, by all means, follow the rules and do what you have to do to, obtain what that is that you're chasing after. But like you said, there are a lot of people who have degrees that aren't necessarily using them, or they graduate, they find out that it's not really something that they want to do. So then they shift gears and they change directions.
Mhm.
And I think that, it's almost a double-edged sword. You can't know the answer to that until you do it, but you can also wait and really learn about what yourself and get real world experience to really figure out what it is that you're interested in. Because a lot of times when you think about it, we come fresh out of high school. Many of us, on average, come fresh out of high school, and we have no idea what we want to do. And we tell people what we want to do based off of something that we've seen or someone that we saw, or something that looks cool, or something that we're currently interested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But until you really learn what goes into that, or what it takes to do that, or the process to get to that point, then that really starts to change your mindset to really figure out, okay, is this something that I'm truly interested in? But I think that, again, that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, like that fear, that change, that hesitation, because we like the end goal. We like the end goal of being this doctor, or being this lawyer, or being this professional videographer or photographer, whatever it is. We like the idea of that. But when we see the process we have to go through to learn those things that we may not be fully interested in, that are a part of this larger picture that we want to do, then there's some red flags that pop up in our mind, and we kind of got to figure out, is what I really want to do, is it worth the extra effort that I'm going to have to put in to even learn the things that are a part of this that I may not be fully interested in. And I don't know, I just think there's a lot of variables that goes into it, whether it's something that everyone should do or something that no one should do, or very specialized depending on what you want to do. So yeah, by no means am I giving direct advice,
Oh yeah, of course
but
not.
I think that I've lucked out and I've been able to use my degree within the company that I'm in a very good company. But a lot of people don't fall into that situation. But even then, I can speaking from my creative side. There are so many more creative things that I have an interest in and am learning about and wanting to do that are not directly associated with what I went to college for. So, it just depends. It really just depends.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked that question is because, um, just still being in school,
Mm-hmm.
not every professor, but a lot of professors and faculty, they kind of like jam it down your throat that, a degree is powerful. It just kind of gets your foot in the door. It's,
Right.
vital to have. You're not going to go anywhere without a degree, stuff like that. Maybe
Right.
not that blunt, but you get what I'm saying.
Right. And I get what you're saying. I think, again, I think that comes back to what you're learning and what you're specializing in. But then, you know, speaking from experience, a lot of the things that I've learned in college and getting degrees that I've gotten, I've only used a small piece of it in the professional world so far. Only because depending on where you work, what you're doing at the place that you work, the position that you have at that job, you're learning the responsibilities that you have to do for that position that you're in.
Yeah.
And every company has a certain way that they do things, and you're learning it within their way of doing it. So, saying that you're not going to go anywhere without a degree, I think it just, again, I'm not giving advice, but I just think it really just depends,
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what I think is the case too. And I've been asking this
Right.
question to a few other people as well. And I think the general consensus is that what you should do is just go out, do a bunch of different things that you think you like, then kind of whatever sticks the most, follow that path, and whatever that path kind of goes,
Exactly.
that's what you need to do in
E-
that situation.
e- exactly.
I never fully understood the argument of, or not even the argument, but just professionals or just different educators saying, hey, you need to go to college. It's going to open a door for you, this, that, and that. And I'm like, all right.
Right.
It's never fully understood that. But
Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing. It's I hate to say it's generational, but it's a mindset thing. And you know, in the age of the internet and what you can learn from when you put the effort into learning, there are a lot of things that you can do and learn and obtain without necessarily having a quote unquote college degree. But then again, there are a lot of things that you can't fully obtain without having a college degree. So, it like you said, you really need to go out there and really figure out when you're getting into those last few years of high school, you really got to boil down, forget the trying to be popular, forget the trying to have all the friends in the world, but really figure out what it is that you're trying to do. Even if you don't go direct to college right after high school and you're going to take some time, but really figure out what it is that you're interested in, truly interested in, want to learn, and find out what direction you have to go in order to obtain that. Because, I have friends that graduated with degrees that, later figured out, what, this is not something that I want to do, and are now going back to school to do something else. So it just, you just got to take that time to really figure out what it is that you want and want to do and have a true interest in.
All right. That's honestly the same response that I've been getting. So I do appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
By no means is I trying to get you to give people like just wanted to get.
Oh no, I just wanted to throw that out there just in case someone is like, oh, I'm gonna go do this because Ron said,
Yeah, no, I know how people are. Yeah,
right.
All right, so these next few questions, I like to call them just quick questions. They're just very off the cuff, just quick answers.
Does that mean I got to give a quick answer?
You can give some thought to it
off the top.
Yeah, give some thought to it. It's up to you. But just some last minute questions before we close up the episode here. So, what is one book that you would recommend everyone reads at least once in their lifetime?
Oh man. Okay. Well, first I would say if you're interested in like the social media entrepreneurial, space in general, I would definitely say read anything by Gary Vee. They're all awesome. Crushing It is probably one of my favorites so far. But outside of that, something that I'm currently reading and diving into now recently is this book called The Power of Intention. And very interesting so far. So I can speak more on it. I'll probably talk about it a little bit in some of my videos once I finish it. But I think that would be a book that I could recommend, even though I haven't finished it, that I could recommend right now.
So far, it's decent.
Right.
All right. So next question. I'm not sure if you eat pancakes or waffles, but if you had to choose pancakes or waffles, and why?
Oh, waffles. Waffles all day.
I need an explanation why. What's going on?
Oh man. Okay. So I don't know. Just as a kid, I just preferred waffles. Maybe it's because of the, how they're shaped and they hold the syrup or whatever it is you're putting on it.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just probably just a preference. Yeah, definitely waffles over pancakes.
All right. I haven't been tallying this up, but I've been asking every guest that I've had so far.
Oh yeah.
I think it's split down the middle right now. All right.
Uh-oh.
I can respect that answer. It's a decent answer.
Okay.
All right. And this is kind of like close to the other question I had before. But maybe there's another thing. So what's the next biggest improvement that you want to make in your personal life? Whether it's like relationship wise or anything that you have going on besides just kind of work on accepting change.
Okay. My next biggest improvement, to be a little lighthearted about it at first, I would say, because I've been an athlete my entire life and I'm still training my body, training my mind, and pushing myself physically, it would be to run my first half marathon and full marathon here shortly. That'd be my next biggest, something that I'm striving after. I know I can do it, but it's just, again, getting over that fear of like, wow, I never ran that far before, But but I think to go a little bit deeper than that, I think, or to go a level deeper, I think that it would be to slowly transition out of the traditional 9-to-5 lifestyle or working environment to more of a full-time content creator of my own. And, it's a thought that I've had for some time. Again, that idea of change and fear and that hesitation. But I think that is going to be my next biggest improvement, or a piece of my personal life that I'm going to challenge myself at and transition myself into. who knows when, who knows how, but I think that's something that's been on my mind for a while. And again, it's coming back to that, being comfortable with change and learning and learning and challenging yourself to get through that. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's definitely possible. So I say just keep it in the back of your head and just keep working towards it.
Right.
That's awesome to hear.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So, Ron, this kind of brings us to the end of the episode. Is there anything that you want to link or if you want people to know about that you have working on project-wise or just merch, videos, where to follow you at?
Yeah. You can follow me on YouTube, Ronald L. Banks. You can follow me on Instagram at I'm Ron Banks. I am Ron Banks, all one word, no underscore. I don't really have a lot of projects that I'm ready to speak on right now. There are things that I have in the back of my mind, things that I'm working on when I have the free time. But if you follow me on Instagram, that's where I will release things first. That's where I will communicate things first before it goes to YouTube. So definitely follow me on Instagram. If you love my poetry, that's a place to follow me as well, or interested in my poetry. There's another project that I have. I actually have a second YouTube channel that I'm doing with my girlfriend. We're vlogging and sharing our journey through veganism. It's a piece of our lives that we've challenged ourselves at. So the title of that channel is going to be Simple Vegan Soul. So I will give you the link to that so you can leave it in the description as well. But that is a second project that I'm working on with her that we're documenting that piece of our lives. But yeah, I think just Instagram would be the place to really get to know me outside of YouTube and to see what I'm working on and things that I have coming up.
All right. I'm excited for all the future projects and videos that you have coming. I'll be sure to link everything that you just mentioned in the description.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Great questions. I'm still thinking about some of them in the back of my head, but I really appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you reaching out. It's a great conversation. It's going to be a great episode.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share with a friend and leave a quick review on iTunes. It'll take about 30 seconds, and I would personally really appreciate it. It kind of just lets me know what I need to improve on and what I'm doing well. Anyway, with that said, enjoy the rest of your week, and remember to start something new today.